All right, welcome to the first assignment of our course. This is what we're going to be modeling today, which is a three-story office building. And I'll turn on wireframe view so you can see a little more. We have all the major model elements are in place is what we're going to model today. Walls, floors, roofs, columns, foundations, stairs, and then some interior walls as well. I hope you follow along and take notes and take notes of questions as you have them, and we will in our next course answer any questions and problems you ran into along the way. So this is part one of assignment one, and I hope you'll follow along with me, and good luck. We'll start the project by saying new, and then selecting architectural template from the template file, and we want to make sure we're creating a new project and say OK. Okay, so we'll start with our datum elements, including grids, reference planes, and levels. So first, the grid under the architecture tab, we'll start to create some grid lines, and in the north-south plan north-south view, we'll start these by naming them 1, and then we want 4 more levels here. Let's copy the first one over, grids here. Copy the first one over 20 feet, and I'll copy it again 40 feet, and copy it one more time 20 feet. Now I can place a dimension string between all these to see the overall grid dimension and then the sort of secondary grid dimensions. So we see overall grid 1 to 4 is 80 feet, and then 1 to 2 is 20, 2 to 3 is 40, 3 to 4 is 20 feet. Now let's do grids in the other direction, the east-west direction. So I'll place one here. And I just kind of eyeballed it to start with, but I will start to rename this with letters. So we'll name our east-west grids in letters, and then our north-south grid with numbers, as you see. So then I will just use the copy command to copy this down 20 feet, and then I'll do it again 5 feet, and then one more time another 20 feet. And I will again place dimension strings between the outermost grid lines and then to each grid line individually, just to kind of check my work. Okay, so the grids are essentially complete at this point. We may still have to modify their vertical extents later, but from a plan perspective on level 1 here, those are done. So now I want to place a set of reference planes that's going to help me determine where my columns lay in plan. So I will just start by hitting this reference plane tool, and I'm going to eyeball where this is going to go. We will first just keep it on the inside, between inside grid A and inside grid D, and then again inside grid 4 and inside grid 1. And then again above grid B and below grid C. So I just kind of eyeballed that, but you'll see what I'm going to do here is now select each one and use the temporary dimensions that show up to give those reference planes an even 2/6 dimension from all grid lines. So after I select the grid line, you can see this temporary dimension shows up. I'll just change this to 2/6. And then for each one of those reference plane I drew, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to change all their temporary dimensions to 2/6. That way I know that each reference plane is 2/6 off of the grid line. So I think I got all the east-west reference planes. Now I'll do the north-south reference planes. That one is already at 2/6. I'll change the outer one. And then last one, there needs to be one in the middle. So the way I did that was I selected one reference plane, and I typed CS for create similar, and then now I'm going to draw it roughly in the middle of the building. You can see it's not quite equidistant between points 2 and, or grids 2 and 3, which it needs to be. So I'll just put a dimension string. The command is di from 2 to 3, and then hit the middle reference plane, and then let's see if I can move this so it's a little clearer. Select that reference plane. Since it's associated with that, select the dimension string, and since it's associated with this reference plane in the middle, I can hit the equalize button here, and it's going to place it equidistant between 2 and 3. I'm going to delete that dimension and hit unconstrained, but I know that it's the correct dimension. And I can again place dimension strings to verify that all these are where I wanted them to be. Just checking my work to make sure that, let's see, I already dimensioned those north-south reference planes. So, okay, so at this point we are finished with our grids and reference planes. So let's look at our levels. We want a floor-to-floor of 12 feet, so we're going to change level 2 to 12 feet. We need to create a few more levels, so we're going to copy level 2 up using the copy command, which is CO. So I'm going to copy that 12 feet, and then one more time CO, and I'm going to copy that up 12 feet. We'll name this, instead of level 4, we'll call this roof, and we want to copy down level 1 5 feet, and we'll call that top of foundation. So some final cleanup things here before we're completely done with our datum elements is we need to extend our grid lines and reference planes so they cross the new levels that we've created. Otherwise, if we create a plan right now based on level 3, grids A, B, C, D, and the other grids 1, 2, 3, 4, along with these reference planes, are not going to show up in a level 3 floor plan or the roof plan. So we need to select one of those grid lines in this view, and I'll pull that up all the way through the roof, and I'll pull the bottom of that down as well. So just keep in mind, I'm only modifying grids A, B, C, and D here. I need to do the same thing to grids 1, 2, 3, and 4. Remember, these are 3D elements, so if I go to the other opposite view of this, the west elevation, you can see those grids have been pulled up here as well, because I did it in the east elevation. But now I need to do it in the north and south views. So I'll do the same thing in my north elevation, and you can check in your south elevation that those have been modified there as well. Final thing is I'll pull these reference planes up just by clicking them and grabbing the bubble at the end to extend those up past the roof level. And then same with the grid bubbles. If you do it in the south elevation, it will be visible in north, and then again if I do it in the east elevation, which I'll do now, just pull those reference planes up to cross all the levels. Once I do it there, it's also visible in the west elevation. So I can look at my level 1 floor plan and level 2 floor plan. You can see my reference planes are all there. My grid lines are all there. We now have set up the number of levels that we need, and we're ready to move on to some modeling of walls. Next, we'll create all exterior walls. And we'll start on level 1. I'm on a level 1 floor plan. And I'll type WA for wall. It's also under architecture and wall here. I'll hit the type selector and make sure that I have selected generic 8 inches, which is just a generic 8-inch wall. It doesn't have any material value, but it's 8 inches thick. So you can see by default the location line is set to wall center line. We're going to change that to finish face exterior. And since we're drawing level 1 walls here, we want the base constraint to be level 1 and the top constraint to be level 2. Now, this is the way I would draw all my walls if I was going to model a separate wall to be the foundation wall. But I'd actually like to change, have my first level walls reach all the way down to the foundation. So instead of the base constraint being level 1, let's change that to top of foundation. So the extent of this wall is going to be from top of foundation up to level 2. And remember, I changed the location line to finish face exterior. So I'm going to start in this bottom left hand corner, and I'll click once right here at this grid intersection. And you can see that the wall is following, the outside face of the wall is following the grid line. So this is the condition I want to model all exterior walls with, where the outside face of the wall is connected to the grid line. So I'm going to go around the building kind of in this Z shape, and so I'll go up to grid line C, over to 2, all the way up to grid A, over to grid 4, down to grid B, over to grid 3, all the way down to grid D, and then back to my starting point. So you can see this sort of Z shape is what I'm going for. So then I'll just type, or I'll just open up a default 3D view to see what we have there and verify that the shape we wanted is present, and it is. So I'm looking at level 1 now. So now I'm ready to model the exterior walls for level 2. And for level 2, it's actually just going to be the opposite. It's going to be the same shape, only opposite. We're going to start this time up in the up at the intersection of grid line A and 1. So let's go up there and do that now. So I'll go up to level 2, and I'll type WA for wall. The wall I want is selected, this generic 8-inch. Finish face exterior is my location line, and then my base constraint is level 2, top constraint up to level 3 is correct. Now you can see that just by default when you open a new project in Revit, you can see the walls below. So that wall below that's actually an underlay, that's why it's that gray color. So it's showing me the walls that I've modeled on level 1. We can turn off that underlay. If you hit escape, you can see your underlay is over here on the properties bar. So it's showing level 1 underlay. I can turn that off here by changing range base level to none. But I'll actually keep it on for now so that we can see what's below and what we're modeling on top of. So again, I'm going to type WA for wall, and I'm going to start at the intersections of grids 1 and A. So I'll go to start here, and I'll go over to grid line 3, over to grid C, over to 4, down to D, over to grid line 2, over to grid line B, out to grid line 1, and back to my starting point. So you can see sort of with the underlay on of level 1, we've created two sort of Z-shaped plans on top of one another, and I can look at that again in 3 dimensions to make sure that that's what I wanted, and it is. So just for reference, I have a keyboard shortcut set up for my default 3D view, so you can always just go up and click this house in at the top of the screen, which is the default 3D view. I have a shortcut which is 3.3. If you type KS for keyboard shortcuts and then type default, it'll start to sort the commands, and you can see default 3D view. I entered the shortcut. You can assign new shortcuts to things by typing the keys you want and saying assign. Now I have a shortcut for going to my default 3D view, which I do a lot. So from any view I can type 3.3 and that view comes up. Okay, so the next set of walls, we're almost done. We just need the level 3 walls at this point. So you can see we don't have a floor plan for level 3, so we need to create one first. We do have a level present for that, so this makes it pretty easy. We can go to View, and then Plan Views, and Floor Plan. and you can see the type of floor plan we're creating is floor plan, and then we want to create it based off of level 3. You can see not all of my levels are present here because this is checked, do not duplicate existing views. If I uncheck that, I can make additional floor plans based on other levels, but I'll keep that checked for now because we're just creating it for level 3, and I'll say OK. And for the level 3 exterior walls, I'm going to type WA, and this one's going to be even easier. I'm just going to start with the rectangle tool instead of the line. That way I can go from this top corner all the way down to the bottom right corner. And so it's just a big rectangular floor plan. And you can see these were already correct when I started. The base constraint was level 3 and the top constraint was up to level roof, which is what we want. And I'll go to 3D again to make sure that everything, all my walls are in the same plane. And it looks like at this point all my exterior walls are complete. Okay, before I make any other model elements, floors, roofs, etc., let's go ahead and create all the views that we're going to need for this schematic set of plans. So I do want a floor plan for each level. Level 1, 2, and 3 we've already created. We have 4 elevations, so those are already ready. We also want 2 sections, so let's go ahead and create those sections now. Under the View tab and Section, let's put one up between grids A and B looking to the north. And then directly after I create that, immediately after I create that, you can see this dashed line indicating the extents of the section. We just want to make sure to pull those arrows so that they extend beyond the exterior face of the building. So I'm just going to pull that so I make sure that that crosses the edge of the building at the north. Now let's create another one. Another way to create a section, up here at the quick access toolbar, there's another little section tool there, so you can always use that. And so let's make this one go in between grid lines 1 and 2, and we'll finish it here. The only thing I want to change here is I actually want this to look towards the east, so after I create the section and it's still selected, I can just hit these the flip section arrows, and then again extend the end of my section beyond the edge of the building. You don't always have to pull the extent of the section to the edge of the building. If you were just trying to show a particular slice of the building, you wouldn't need to pull it all the way beyond, but we want to see all the way through, so we're going to change that to we're going to pull the edge of the section visibility beyond the edge of the building. Okay, so now we've created our 2 sections. You can see they showed up here in the project browser, sections 1 and 2. Now we want to create a few 3-dimensional views. So we'll just open our default 3D view, and I'm going to right click on that and say duplicate view and duplicate. And then I will just click this top arrow of my view cube here and then zoom in, and then we're going to rename this view axonometric. Now I'm ready to create a perspective view, the view I want next. So I'll go to level 1, and up next to the default 3D view, you can hit this drop down and create a camera view. So once I hit camera, I choose a starting point, and then I'm going to pull way past the building for my ending point, which starts to create a section, a perspective. I can sort of modify the edge of the extents of my perspective. I can also use the navigational wheel to walk around and ensure that my building fits within the extent of my perspective here. So it's sort of this bounding box. Once it does, okay, so I'm done with that one. Not gonna spend a ton of time on these. There's not a ton of model elements to view at this point. I just want to set these views up so I can place them on sheets and start to see how the set is developing. The last view I'll create is a section perspective. So again, I will, actually for this one I'm just going to duplicate the perspective I just made. So I'll just say duplicate. And from this view, I will turn on the section box in the properties bar. I'm going to go ahead and rename this one now so I don't get the two views confused. And so I'll just rename this one section perspective. And then that 3D view 1, I'm going to rename that to exterior perspective. So for my section perspective, after I turned on the section box, I can move the extents of this section box in so that we can start to see inside the building. I don't have to keep this locked to the same angle as my exterior perspective. I can move that around. I will just move maybe up just a little bit, and that's good. We'll just leave that like that for now. And I'll leave the section box turned on. You can always turn that off, but we want to actually hide its visibility later on. So you can see actually when I turned it off and then back on, it reset to the outer perimeter. So once again, I'm going to pull that just in, and we'll just leave that like that for now. Okay, so now I'm ready. I have all the views that I need. Now I just need to I'm going to create two sheets. Just starting by right-clicking on sheets and saying new sheet, and we'll just use the default 30 by 42 horizontal sheet title block that's loaded by default, and we'll say OK. So that created my first sheet, and I can expand this in the project browser. You can see that there, and I'll right-click on it one more time and say new sheet again and say OK. So now I have two sheets, which is all we're going to need for this project. So on the first sheet, let's go ahead and drag all the views we want on here. So we want level 1, and we'll put that in the bottom corner here. At this point, don't worry about the graphics outside the building. We'll fix that later. Let's just get everything where it needs to be, and then we can clean it up in a minute. So plan number 2, I'm just kind of nudging those plans around with my with the arrows on my keyboard. You can see that if a view gets out of line, it will want to snap to other views, other like views on the sheet if you drag them to a similar location. So you can see when I move that over, this vertical dashed line appears, indicating that my two plans are aligned, which is what I want. And so then I'll bring in level 3 and nudge that sort of down into place. And you can see that we've got a lot of overlap going on. And we're going to need to clean up some stuff, but that's okay. We just need a starting point. Next, I will pull in my 4 elevations. So I'll start with the north elevation, and all these are at 1/8 inch scale. If I select a plan, you can see it's at 1/8 inch. So every drawing on this sheet is at the same scale. So there's my north elevation. I'll go east. And west. Again, you can see the alignment line there, indicating that I'm aligned with my other elevation. And then the south elevation. Okay, for the next sheet, we'll pull in our 2 sections, which is also at an 1/8 inch scale. Section 1 and section 2. Our axonometric view will pull up in this right hand corner. Our exterior perspective and our section perspective. Now those are a little too small for now, but at this point we have brought onto the sheets every view that we're going to need. So that's great. So now we can continue to work on model elements and then clean up these views as the model progresses. Okay, back in my level 1 floor plan now, and I'm going to create the floors for each level, and then we'll also create the roof. So let's start in level 1, and we'll go to architecture and floor, and we'll say floor architectural. Make sure to save your project from time to time. So again, just similar to how we did our walls, we'll go over to the type selector and make sure that the generic 12-inch floor is selected. So we'll select that floor type. And then we'll start up in the top. You'll see we're in sketch mode now, which is why everything is a little bit grayed out, and we've got these line options up here at the top, so different shapes and curves that we can create the edge of our floor. So I'll start just by selecting the line tool. I'll show you a couple different ways to do this. We want to place the edge of our floor at the inside face of all exterior walls for level 1. So to do that, I'll just start down here in this corner, and I'll just trace all the inside faces of the exterior walls. So this is one way. Another way is to select up here at the top the Pick Lines tool, and I can just simply select the inside face of each wall, and it will place a floor edge wherever I click, whichever line that I click. So you can see, just make sure, just go around and make sure that all your exterior walls are touching. You can see it created 2 here, but that's actually okay since they're not overlapping. That should work out just fine. You just want to make sure that it's a closed loop. If it's not a closed loop, which I'll indicate here, and you try to finish the plan, you'll finish the sketch mode, you'll see that you get an error that says your lines must be in closed loops. It's okay if you get that, just say continue. Oftentimes it'll give you a little warning, like it'll show some little orange dots indicating where the sketch is not closed. So I'll say continue, and then to close that off, I can use trim extend. So the command is TR, select one line then the other to close off, to bring 2 lines together. And so then I will say finish, and now we've created a floor for level 1. And we can verify that. We can open one of our sections, and we can zoom into level 1, and you can see here is the floor that we created. So now we're ready to create one for 2 and 3, and then we'll also create the roof. So let's go up to level 2. For the second floor, I'll go up to level 2, and we'll do it a little bit differently here. We won't follow the inside face. Now we'll follow the outside face of exterior walls. And you'll see the shape we're going to create. I'll start by saying under the Architecture tab, I'll go to Floor Architectural, and I will select the Line tool again. I'll start up in the top left-hand corner, and we're going to go to all the exterior faces. The only reason it won't be a complete rectangle is we'll cut out this little section between B and C, and also on the west side here. So let's just see what that looks like. So I'll go down to grid line B, then over to grid line 3, back to C, and then over to grid line 4 again. So I'm just cutting out this little section. We're not going to create a floor there on level 2. So again, I'll go all the way to the outside up here, and then again we'll cut out this little section, and then back to our starting point, and we'll hit finish. It asks, would you like walls that go up to this floor's level to attach to its bottom? So you can attach, often when you make new floors and there's walls below it, Revit will ask if you would like to attach the walls below to the floor that you just created. At this point, we're just going to say no. You'll find sometimes that that's a useful tool, other times it's better to do it manually. Okay, so now we have our level 2 floor. And we can again go into section, and we can see here is that level 2 floor that we just created. Okay, so let's go to level 3 now and create that floor. Same way, architecture, and then floor, architectural. And for this floor, we'd like to create a sort of window shade on the exterior, so a floor that extends beyond the edge of the building by about, let's make it 2'6" again. But this floor plan is rectangular. We just need an extension on all 4 sides of 2'6". So let's go up to the rectangle tool, and instead of drawing it directly on the exterior face of the walls, we will first type in an offset of 2 space 6. So that's going to be 2 feet 6 inches. Now when I go to click my starting point, you'll see that immediately it starts to draw the edge of the floor with an offset of whatever I've entered up here at the top left. So in my case it's 2 foot 6. So once I go to that bottom corner, I can click there and say finish. And then again we're going to say no to that prompt. And now we can see we have a floor for level 3 that extends 2 foot 6. I'll show a dimension just to verify. That's 2 foot 6 from all the exterior faces of the walls. And we can hop in 3D and we can see that floor plane. Now for the roof, we actually want it to be, we want the roof to be the exact same shape. Obviously we just want it above level 3. So we have not created a roof plan, so a roof associated with this level roof. But so we could create one and to draw the roof, but I'd actually like to show you another way, which is just in level 3, since we know we're going to be placing it in the exact same position, let's just do it from the 3rd floor plan and we'll associate the roof with a different level. So we'll go up here to say roof and then roof by footprint. And then before we start to draw it, we will change the base level to roof. And we have the basic roof generic 12-inch selected, so let's keep that one. And then I can just draw a rectangle. I don't need an offset this time because I can just follow the extents of the roof below, or excuse me, the floor below. So I'll just click that there. And then you can see there's a triangle on each one of these roof edge segments, which means that that segment of the roof will define a slope. But for our project, we want an entirely flat roof. So we need to uncheck define slope for each one of these lines. So you can do them each one at a time, or you can select multiple of them and uncheck define slope. After you do that, none of those roof segments, roof edge segments, are going to display a triangle, which means you're going to have a flat roof. So we'll say finish, and we'll again go to 3D view to see what we've come up with, and it looks like all of our floors are now in place. Now let's place our columns, our structural columns. We'll do that from level 1 floor plan, and I'll go to architecture, column, and structural column. You can see once I do that and I go to the type selector, only 2 types of columns are loaded by default. They're these 2 W-shaped columns. We would like to use a round concrete column. So let's go up to load family, and from the U.S. Imperial Library we will scroll down to structural columns and concrete, and then concrete round column, and say open. So we've now loaded a new column type into the project. You can see here in my type selector, now I have 4 different sizes of concrete columns. So let's go with 12-inch round column, and let's zoom into this upper left hand corner, and we want the column to be at the intersection of these 2 reference planes. It will allow you, Revit allows you to snap to grid line intersections very easily, but it doesn't appear like it's going to let me snap to the center or to the intersection point of those reference planes. So I'm just going to place it anywhere in this view, and then I'll align it manually. But before I place it, I want to change, I want to make sure that this is set to height, and then we'll leave this, or we'll change this to roof. So that means we're placing it on level 1 and it's going up to the level of roof. So I'm just going to place it here. And then I'll use the Align tool, which the shortcut is AL, to select the reference plane being the point I want to align to, and then the vertical center line of the column, and then the same procedure going east-west. So I'll select this reference plane and then the east-west center line of the column. So now I know that that column is centered on those 2 reference planes. I will go into 3D view to just see what I've created here, and I can see there's my column. It goes from, when you pre-select it, you can see it behind the other walls. You could also turn on wireframe to see that column go from level 1 up to the level of roof. So the only change I'm going to make to this before I start copying it around is I'm going to change the base level to top of foundation to bring it down below level 1. So now I have a column that extends from the top of foundation up to the roof level. So from my level 1 plan now, I can just copy this around where I know that I need it. So I'm going to use the copy command, CO, and I'm going to check multiple up here, which allows me to copy the element multiple times. So I'll go in and select my reference point from where I'm going to copy from, being the very center of the column. And then I have multiple selected, so now I can just place this at all the locations where I need it. So you'll have to just kind of follow along here. We're going to place one 15 feet below that at the intersection of our next reference planes here, and you can see that one is above grid line B. The next one we'll place at the very bottom left-hand corner, that intersection of reference planes, and then the one above it. So we're keeping these columns on the inside of the exterior walls down here, but out here this is actually outside. So so obviously there's no walls surrounding them, but those columns still reach up to support the second floor and the floors above. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'll just go to those intersection points. Those are my grid line or my reference plane intersections, and then two in the middle here. So intersection of that east-west reference plane and then the center line reference plane that I created. So we have two more at the north and south, and then the only difference in the middle here is we'll place two columns at the actually on the grid lines. So these two center columns are on the grid lines B and C, and then aligned again to that the center line reference plane that I created at the beginning. So again, I can open up 3D and I can see all the vertical structure that I just created, all these columns that serve as the main structure for the building, along with some of the exterior walls that sort of envisioned to be load bearing as well. Okay, so that's placement of columns, and I think we're ready to move on to the next step. Now let's place foundations around the building. We want foundations on all the exterior walls and all of our columns. So let me change the visibility back to hidden line so we can see a little clearer, and then I'll just rotate so we can see the base of the building. Let's do the column footings first. And so to do so, I will go into level 1 plan, and we'll go to the structure tab and then isolated foundation, and then I get a warning that no structural foundations family is loaded in the project. So I'm going to load one now, and in the U.S. Imperial Library we'll go to structural foundations and then footing rectangular. And we'll say open. Now before we place it, let's modify the size. This is a rectangular footing. I'd like to make a square one. So let's go to edit type and duplicate, and let's make this we'll do 36 inches by 36 inches by 12 inches and say okay. And so that just changed the name. Now we need to actually modify the dimensions of the model itself. So remember, we're editing type parameters of a family here. So the thickness I can change to 12 inches. The width is 36 inches, and the length is 36 inches. And we'll say okay. So now you can see there's a new type here, the one I just created, so we'll select that one. And the only thing I need to make sure of before I start placing this, now it's a square foundation, is check the level in which we're placing it. So we're obviously on level 1, but we want to place the level of the footing at top of foundation. So at this point I can just select all of the, and it is letting me snap this time, unlike when I was placing columns. I can snap to all the intersections of my reference planes right below where my columns are. Now for each one, you can see I'm getting an error down at the bottom that says none of the created elements are visible in floor plan level 1 view. Now that's okay. It's just telling me, you know, you're creating elements and they're not visible as you're creating them. So that's actually okay. So I'm just going to continue selecting all, making sure that both the east-west and north-south datum element is pre-selected before I place it. That way I know that it's centered. The foundation I'm placing is centered below the column. So I'm going through and placing all these. 2 more. 1, and there's the last one. So again, none of those were visible as we were creating them, but because we were putting them on the top of foundation level, we can go to 3D view now and we can see all those foundations that we placed below each column. Now we will place foundations on all the exterior walls by going to Structure and then Wall Foundation. And this one's even easier. We can just click each exterior wall. I'm doing this in 3D view. So now I've placed a footing below each exterior wall. And so at this point we're done with our structural foundations. Let's place some interior partitions. So from the Architecture tab and Wall, let's, in the type selector, before we had the 8-inch wall selected, let's change this to generic 5-inch for interior walls. So right now the location line is set to wall center line. I'm going to change that to finish face exterior because I want to, for this first wall, align one edge of it to the wall, to the exterior wall above it. So as I drag this down, so sometimes if your wall will start and it's going in the opposite direction that you want it to, you can just hit spacebar to flip the orientation of the wall to either side of the location line. So I'll keep it on this line and we'll call it 13 feet. As I was modeling that, you can see the base constraint was level 1 and the top constraint is up to level 2. So that was all correct as I was modeling it. Let's do a similar thing up here and create a wall that closes off this space to the northeast. Let's place a wall roughly on the this north-south reference plane down to the grid line, and then maybe a horizontal wall right here. And then let's do another one sort of there. Okay, so for this wall, let's go ahead and let's put this wall directly in between, at the midpoint between the two walls surrounding it. So to do that, I'm going to type DI for dimension. I'm going to hover over the inside face of the wall and hit Tab until that pre-selects, and then to the other face again hit Tab, and then the center line of the wall. Then I can hit that equal tool to make sure that these two rooms are the same distance or the same width. I'm now going to, let's take this wall and pull this in back so we have 5 feet here. And to do that, I create a dimension string. Again, I hit Tab to get the inside face of the wall, and then the outer face of that wall, and then clicked into space to finish the dimension string. To change this dimension, I want to select the wall that I want to change, then I can select the dimension and change that to 5 feet. Let's draw some other walls, and we're not going to worry too much about their dimensions at the moment, but let's go ahead and get them in, and then we can modify as we need. So I'm going to put a few more dimension strings here. Let's change this to 5, 6. And then this wall, let's extend this dimension string here. It's in, okay, we'll leave that at 2 feet there, that's good. We'll get a horizontal dimension here, and we'll call that 8 feet. Okay, so that's those are looking pretty good. Now let's just draw a wall over here, and let's make sure that is 5 feet from the wall to the south of it. And then I want each side of the wall to extend into the room by 5 feet. So there's a few different ways to do this, but I'm just going to draw a detail line. The command is DL from the inside face of the wall, and I'm going to go out 5 feet. And then I'm just going to draw a vertical line up. And then I'm going to take that line and select the line and use the mirror tool, and I'll draw DM for draw mirror. I'll go to the center line of the wall and then draw a vertical line straight there. So I know I just mirrored this line around this wall. So I know that both of those lines are 5 feet from the inside face of the wall. Now I can just use the align tool, AL, select my guideline and then the wall, and then again my guideline and then the edge of the wall. And then I can delete all these things that I drew. I don't need those detail lines anymore. Okay, so I think that that's basically all the walls on level 1. Let's go up to level 2. Now you can see the walls below because we have our underlay on. Let's go ahead and turn that off now. So we'll go to range base level and go to none. Okay, so let's draw a wall aligned with this grid line here. So I hit spacebar to flip it, and I'll draw that all the way across. We'll draw a wall here and another one here. This is going to frame where some stairs are going to go. We'll draw a space here for a couple bathrooms, and then we're going to roughly show where there's going to be another set of stairs between these two walls. So this is a strategy I use often when I'm drawing floor plans. That's to just draw the walls in without very accurate dimensions, just to get them roughed in first, and then go back and place some dimension strings to ensure that I'm drawing with nice even dimensions. So let's change this to 5 feet. The width of this, let's change to 4, 6. And let's extend that dimension string here so I can change the length of this wall to 18.9. Let's continue with these outer walls. I'll place some more dimension strings. I want this to be at 13.4. I'll go ahead and bring this wall down so I can align the edge of those two walls together. I want this wall to be 8 inches from the grid line, and this one to be 8.2. Each one of these rooms, let's put dimension string across. Let's change this to 5, 6, and then we'll do one more dimension string. Again, I'm hitting tab to align to that face, and then tab again to align to the inside face. Select this one and change that to 5, 6. So now we have 2 equidistant rooms there. And lastly, let's get a horizontal dimension for what our stairs are going to be. Let's change this to 8'9". Okay, looks like we have all the walls we need for the second floor. Let's move up to the third floor. So the third floor, I'm going to first try to turn on the level 2 underlay so I can see the walls below. This will allow me to trace the outline of the stair here, and I'm going to also trace these two bathrooms on the floor below. Up on the third floor, we're going to put a mechanical room over here, and I can start by just drawing walls on top of the wall on the floor below, and I drew that up so that the top of the north edge of this mechanical room aligned with the north edge of that bathroom. So to just put some more dimensions here, we've got 7'1", 6'11", and then from the outside grid, here's some more dimensions that you can check as you're modeling your project. Okay, so I think that's all the interior walls we'll model now. This may develop further as we go, but we'll stop it there and move on to some other model elements. Let's model our stairs from level 1 to level 2. So I'll go to the Architecture tab and the Stair tool. We'll choose Monolithic Stair from the Type selector, which is sort of a cast-in-place, just single material stair. We can see the base level is level 1 and the top level is level 2, which is what we want. So again, you can see we're in sketch mode here, and we want to start with this with a straight run of stairs. So the first one is going to be an exterior set of stairs that goes up to the second floor from the base level. So I'm just going to start it. We can modify its location after we create it. But I'm going to start it here, and I'm going to click once, and you can see that it begins to build my stairs and count out the number of risers and runs, and it automatically calculates what the stair length needs to be based on the information that's built within this type family. So I'll go to Edit Type, and you can see where it calculates this from. So the calculation rules say that the maximum riser height is 7 inches. The minimum tread depth is 1 feet. So that's what it's using to calculate rise and run from level 1 to level 2. So as I click once, it will automatically tell me this right end, that's how far I need to drag my stair to make it all the way from level 1 to level 2 within the calculation parameters. If I finish the stair here, like 3/4 of the way or something, you can see below where I'm creating the stair it says 15 risers created, 6 remaining. I need to go all the way until it says 0 remaining. That means I'm creating enough risers to actually make it from level 1 to 2. So I'll pull my cursor all the way to the end of sort of that rectangle that's created, and I'll click there, and you can see I have 21 risers. So the only thing I'll change is the width of this, which I can just select that run of stairs and select this temporary dimension. I'm going to change that to 5 feet. And then let's hit Finish. So now we've created the stair. I'm going to move it. I want it to be right in the midpoint between these two grid lines. So I'm going to move it. I'm going to try to grab the south edge and move it down to there. And there we go. So now it fits perfectly within those grid lines. The next thing I want to do is move it east-west. So I'm going to select the center of the wall and move it all the way to the outer wall. And then, because up on level 2, I want there to be about 5 feet of a landing before the stairs start, I'm going to move it back 5 feet exactly. So now I know that the edge of the stair ends with 5 feet between the edge of the stair and the exterior wall above. And we can verify this. We can look at this in 3D view and see the element that we just created. Now it looks like it starts above, you know, kind of floating out in air, but actually remember a lot of this is below grade. So we put these foundations 5 feet below level 1. So that's why this seems to be kind of floating out on the edge here. Let's go ahead and create the other stair that's an interior stair. And we're going to do it the same way. Actually, instead of creating another one, I'm going to save some time and just copy the one that I've already created. And I'm going to copy it with the base point being this wall here, because I want it to, again, end 5 feet from that exterior wall, just like that. Don't worry about the little overlap at the columns. We can, it could be a detail that was worked on later, but at this point we're not going to worry about those little overlaps. Okay, so we've created 2 sets of stairs, both going from level 1 to level 2. If we want to verify that, we can cut a section between both of those stairs and open that up, and we can see that both those stairs go from level 1 up to level 2. Okay, next we want to create stairs that go from level 2 to level 3. So we will go up to our level 2 floor plan, and I'm going to start this. We're going to put a stair here up to level 3. So I'm going to say stair, and then again we select the straight run, and the base level is level 2, the top level is level 3. So I'm just going to, again, it doesn't really matter where you start them. Don't worry about being too accurate on where you start the stair, because you can always move it to where it needs to go after you create it. So again, I'm going to draw my stair. I'm going to pull this all the way to the end until it says 21 risers created 0 remaining. But 0 remaining is the key. So you click there. And now I know that I have enough risers to go from level 2 to level 3. So I'll go ahead and change the width here to, well, let's go ahead and finish that, because so I did put a dimension string here, so that's 4.6. So I need to modify the width of the stair to be 4.6. So since I finished the stair, to edit it again, I have to click on it and say edit stairs. Then I can select the run and modify the width here, 4.6. And I'll hit finish. And then we just need to adjust its location with the move tool so that it fits within the walls that we've already drawn. And then it looks like this wall is not quite long enough to totally contain the stair, so I'll use the Align tool, AL, and select this edge of the stair and this edge of the wall, so that now the wall moves to the west edge of that stair. And we'll do one more stair, only this time a U-shaped stair over here from level 2 to level 3. So let's go ahead and create that. So we'll say architecture and stair. We want to use the straight run tool again, and the key here is that I want to more or less have the same number of risers on either side, but you'll see we have 21 risers required, and so that since that's an odd number, we're going to have one extra riser on either the east or west or east side of these stairs. So let's go ahead and start this. So I'm just going to start it here, and you can see down at the bottom how many risers are created and how many are remaining. So I will create, let's see, let's start with, we want to more or less equalize it, so I'll go with 11 risers created, 10 remaining, and then I'll start the next set equal to the next to last riser so that they finish at the same spot on the north side. So you can see over on this side I've got 11 risers, and on this side I've got 10 risers. I will hit finish now, and we need to do some work to make the width of the stairs fit this space. So let's first bring the bottom right hand corner. Well, let's figure out what our stair widths need to be first. So the interior dimension here is 8'9". So let's move this run over to the edge. So go to edit stairs, take this side and move it over, and I'll just hit finish for a moment because I want to figure out the midpoint here. So I'm going to draw a detail line and then measure this dimension. So 4'4.5". So let's make each stair run 4'4". So I will go to edit stairs and change each run to 4'4". This one as well. And then don't forget the landing. That's the warning that just popped up that I ignored. 4'4". The warning was telling me that my landing was more narrow than my stairs. So once you have all the widths correct, then you can move each stair so that they land inside the walls that we've already created. Okay, and that looks good. So I'll hit finish there. So I've got a little warning about the rail not being continuous. Let's not worry about that right now. That has to do with the width I've provided here. Normally maybe there's a little more width in between, but let's not get too caught up on those things. The last thing I need to do here, I'm going to delete this. Those are just detail lines that I drew. Now I'm just going to align the walls I've already created to the edge of the stair. I didn't know exactly how long those walls needed to be until I got the stair drawn. Now I can move the walls to fully encapsulate it. And then up on level 3, I'll do the same, but we can't see the stair yet, which leads me to our next task, which is when you bring a stair up to a higher level, you need to cut out the floor above it. So you can see here on level 2, we're looking down to level 1, and you can almost select the stair, but it's actually underneath the floor of level 2 here. So I need to modify the extents of the level 2 floor so that there is a space cut out where this floor comes up. So I'll also just say edit boundary of the stair, and I'll just draw a rectangle around the extents of the stair going from level 1 to level 2. So that's right there. And then over on this leftmost stair, you can see that because I created this landing here, I need to move the edge of the floor back to meet the edge of the stair. And now I can hit finish, and we'll say no to that. And let's see what we did here. I'm going to go open up a 3D view and turn on the section box so that I can cut inside the building, and you can see what I've done with that. See, now this stair can go up through level 2, so here's this opening that I just created. If I select that floor and say edit boundary, you can see those are the 4 interior perimeter lines of the floor that I created to make a cutout. And over here is where I pulled this floor edge from this wall over to the edge of the stair to create a landing at the top here. So now let's move up to level 3, because in this view neither of our stairs is visible, again indicating that we need to cut out the floor where those stairs come up through it. So let's do that now. So I'll draw additional boundary lines for the stair, for the floor, excuse me, and up here as well. So there's my sketch for my floor, and hit finish. And that's looking pretty good. I think the only thing I want to do is just maybe align the mechanical room wall to the edge of the stair, just clean this up a bit, and then align the stair walls for the U-shaped stair up to the north end there. And I'll turn off the underlay here so we're not getting confused with things on the floor below. Okay, so that's so I've created stairs now that again, I'll open up 3D view. Now we can see another set of stairs over here, and then I'll cut this edge in a little bit so that we can also see there's our U-shaped stair going from floor 2 to floor 3. Alright, so I think, I believe that's all the model elements that we are going to tackle at this time. The next step is we want to work on a few annotation elements, and as well as organize these views on the sheets a little bit and clean up the visibility so that we're ready to submit this as part 1 of assignment 1. Okay, now let's create some annotation elements. Let's start with room tags. So we want to be able to define what these spaces are and the name of the room. So to create a room, we use the room tool. You can also type RM. And at this point, you can just drag it to fill the space of any room you've already created. You can see that it automatically finds bounding edges of rooms. So let's just place our first one here and our second one here. So we want to give the rooms a name, obviously. So let's do that first. To select the room, you have to be aware that what you're seeing here is the actual tag. This is called a room tag. So I can't, when I select it, I can click it once and then click it again to change the name. So I'll change that to restroom. Another way to change a room name is to hover over the tag and hit tab. And I had to hit it 2 times until that X showed up, and that is indicating the room itself. So I can select that room, and then over in the properties bar you can see the name of the room, and I will change that to restroom. Last thing on these tags, I don't want to show the room number at this time. So if I select the tag and say edit type, I can uncheck show room number and say OK. So now our tag is only displaying the name of the room itself. So let's drop a few more. I want to type RM, and I'm going to place one here. You can also change the name before. So if I say, I can change this to staff break, so it's like a break area for the staff. I can change that beforehand and then place it. The problem is that it wants to reuse that name each time. So so you just remember that you either have to change it beforehand or change it after. So I'm going to change this to this name to waiting. So this is a waiting area out here. Now I want this room to have a different name. However, it's not actually closed off from this other room. So you can see when I select this room, it's actually since there was no division of space here, it wants to put this area in the same room as this. There's a tool that we can use specifically for this purpose under the Architecture tab called Room Separator, and I'll select that. And then room separators act like walls, but they're really just lines, so they can divide off one space from another. So I only need to start this line at the south edge of this wall and then hit the north edge of this wall, and I've created a room separator line. Now when I go to hit tab to select the waiting room, you can see it no longer collects this this secondary space because I drew a room separator line between the two. Now I can type RM again, and we'll call this quiet waiting. So it's like maybe a secondary waiting area that's partially divided from the main waiting area. Okay, so I will drop, so let's do a couple more. So I'll say room again, RM, and change this to conference. Click out here. And then I want to place a room out here called rear patio. So since this has no bounding elements, you'll see as I'm trying to place it, it can't find any bounding edges of the room. That's okay, I'm just going to place it here, and you'll get an error that says the room is not in a properly enclosed region, which could be a problem if you were trying to use your rooms to calculate overall building area. You just want to be aware that this room is not enclosed, and we're using it mainly as an annotation element to show those exterior areas as well as the interior rooms. Okay, so let's go up to level 2 and do the same thing. The first thing I'll do is I'll just start to drop rooms in all these areas, and then I will rename them later. I will draw another room separator up here because I want this to be a different room. So we'll call this Flex Workroom. Up here we'll call Client Consult. So this would be a public. This is looking like at a public area here. These are going to be bathrooms, so I'm just going to change this to WC for water closet. And this one I'll call that staff work. And then there's 2 patios on this level, so I'll type RM again and just change this to patio, and then another one down here. Okay, last area we'll go up to level 3 and we'll type RM, and let's change the names beforehand. So WC, place that here and here. Another one for the mechanical room, and then the rest of the area is staff open work area, which is essentially the remainder of the space. Okay, so you could, if I go to select that room, you could draw a room separator here and create the stairs into separate rooms. So that's a possibility, especially if you were trying to get accurate square footage numbers based on your room areas. For now, we're not going to worry about naming the vertical circulation spaces with room tags. Now all of our rooms are labeled, and we're ready to move on to the next step. The final step of this part of the project is we want to open up our sheet views. I'm in A101 here, and I want to modify these views so that everything looks a little cleaner on the sheet. As you can see, I'll just zoom into the floor plan here. We have a lot of issues. We have graphics overlapping the sheet title block. We have graphics outside of the sheet title block, these elevation markers, and views overlapping one another. Title, the names of each view doesn't really correlate too well, so we need to modify a lot of things here. So let's start by just selecting all the views. I'll just draw a window here, and we want to turn on crop region visible for each view. That's going to, now you can see this outer line appeared. That's going to show us what the extent of the view is. So once I turn those on, I can modify the extent of the view. To do so, I could go back to level 1 and modify it here. Modify so I can pull down the extent of the view here. I find it easier to do within the sheet. That way I can actually see where the extents of my view are relative to the sheet that I'm drawing in. So I will open up, I'll select this level, let's see, that's level 3, okay. So I will say activate view, and then I will take that box and we'll just pull it down to surround the floor plan that we're working on at this time. Okay, so you can see I just brought it in to within about 5 to 8 feet of the edge of the building. And now I will double click outside of the view to deactivate the view. So now let's do the same thing for level 2. So I'll select it. I can double click it to activate that view. Select the crop region, and I'll pull that in to surround the floor plan. Double click outside to deactivate, and do the same with level 1. And I can also now move these, move the view tag itself to, I'll move it up to be below the floor plan itself. So this can be, it can look a little confusing just off the bat because there's so much going on, but that's what we're working to fix here. These views, when you place them on a sheet, they always take a little work to modify the boundaries and stuff so things aren't overlapping. Now let's do the same with the elevations. I'll double click this and start to pull in the sides of the view. You can see sometimes when I do this, it will actually change the extent of my datum. It's not changing the extent of the datum elements, only the visibility of the level, the bubble, and the name of the level will modify as I modify the extent of the view. So I'm going to do that to all 4 elevations. Like so. And then again, I will move the tags for the name down below, just to the bottom left hand corner of each view. So to move these things, I click once on the line itself, and then I can click again and hold, and I'm dragging it over. You can see it snaps to a line with the name on the right, and then I let go to place it. To modify the length of the line, I actually have to select the view, and then I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and you can see the bubble appears on the edge of the line. So it's sort of a little counterintuitive to change the line. The length of the line, you want to select the view, and then the little bubble appears at the end of the line. I can drag that however far I want. Last one down here. Okay. And then there may just be a couple more things I want to do. I can just sort of nudge using my keyboard arrows. I can nudge the location of these views so that I get rid of conditions like this. Anything that's overlapping there, I want to move that in within the sheet title block. And then this is another area I want to work on. You can see the level for this elevation and the level for this elevation. They kind of run into one another. And I want to create some separation here between the 2 views. So I'm going to double click to activate this elevation and select one level line. You can see where it says 2D, meaning I'm only modifying the 2D extents of the grid, not the 3D extents. And I can pull that back a ways. And I'm going to do the same thing over here because they're getting a little close to the plans. So now you can see I've got a little space in between each view. And again, I don't have any level name. You wouldn't want this situation where your levels, the names are overlapping any model elements. So make sure those are out beyond the sort of the drawing area of the building. Okay, so let me just continue to move around. I'll just nudge this down a little bit to stay within the boundary of the sheet. Okay, so the elevations are looking pretty good. Plans might take a little bit more work. I'm going to bounce this down a little bit. I will open up the view because I've got the section marker overlapping the sheet title block, so I can pull its arrow back just a little bit here. Actually, I'm going to switch that so that the marker is at the top side, and then down here we just have a flag. Pull that down just a bit. Okay, and again, so I'm just working through the visibility here, making sure that there's space between my views. Don't worry about this overlap of this rectangle and the name of the view, because we will next select each view and uncheck crop region visible, so we'll turn that off. Then you won't have that overlap anymore. I do, however, want to take the 2D extents of the grid and pull it up so that doesn't overlap the view. Same down here, I'll select the view, uncheck crop region visible, and modify the 2D extents of my grid. And then last one, I'll go to the top. Let's see here. I need to pull down the top grids a little bit, as well as this section marker. Let's do it just a little bit more. And then we'll turn off the crop region for that view as well. And I'll select all 4 elevations with holding down the control key and uncheck crop region visible. Looks like I still have a little overlap at the top. Let me just nudge that down just a little bit. So just fine tuning at this point. I could probably stand to pull those down a bit. I like to give each drawing a little bit of room to breathe so that views don't crowd one another. But as I zoom out now, you can see I'm almost good. Looks like I need to work on this little section marker. So let me just pull that in so that it's not hanging off so far. And you can see it updated for the other 2 as well. So that's looking pretty good. So let's go to the second page now. Actually, while we're here, let's go ahead and change the title block to reflect your individual project. So let's put your name here just by selecting the title block and then clicking where it says owner. Let's put your name, so I'll put mine. And then assignment 1, part 1. And then we'll say this is the name of the sheet, so we'll call this plans elevations. Now when we go to the next page, let me just open that up, you can see that some of this stuff kept that information. This would essentially be the owner's name, which would be reflected on each sheet. And this is the more or less project name, and then this is the sheet name. So for this one, we'll name this sheet Sections 3D Views. Okay, so again, I want to work on the size of my views, their location, and then anything overlapping other views. So the first thing I can see is my level lines in my 3D view are overlapping some stuff. So I actually want to just turn levels off in this view entirely. So I want to make this view so that no levels are visible. So there's a couple ways to do that. Let me first tell you what the wrong way would be. The wrong way would be to select one and say hide in view elements. First of all, you'd have to do that with each one individually. Second of all, if any new levels were created, you'd have to come back here and hide them all individually. So we want to set the visibility graphics for the view so that no levels ever show in this view. So 2 different ways to open up visibility graphics. One is over here under graphics. You can say visibility graphics overrides and edit. More common way, since we open this dialog often, is to just type VG, which is the keyboard shortcut for visibility graphics. And over under annotation categories, we'll find levels and we'll just turn that off entirely. by unchecking that box and say OK. So that turns off all levels for the view, only the view that we're in. You can see in other views levels are still visible. Changing visibility graphics only changes it for the view that the individual view that you're modifying. So I'll take the view title over here and we'll kind of keep it next to the view it's annotating. Next, let's change the size of both of these perspectives. So I want to show you two different ways, or some different ways that this can be done. You want to select for perspective views. So just an overall note first. This isometric or axonometric view actually has a scale, right? 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. I can change that to 3/16 and it can be a much bigger axon. Let's see if that will actually fit on the sheet. Yeah, I think we can make it fit. So we'll have that at 3/16 inch scale. Now we know how much room we have down here at the bottom. I'll fix this overlap here in a minute. So let's select this perspective. We want this to just be a larger view of the same thing. So we want to go to size crop after we select the view itself, size crop. And we want to change it to scale, locked proportions, and change the width to, let's try from 7 to 11 inches. See how big that is. And I just hit enter after I finish that. I think it could stand to be a little bigger, so let's go back to scale. Let's try 12. Okay, alright. That's a little better view down there. I can select it and uncheck crop region visible. This 3D view, it might have had the crop boundary visible initially, but just make sure that you uncheck crop region visible to turn that off afterwards. The section perspective, let's also make that a little bit larger. So let's go size crop, scale, locked proportions, and let's try 12 inches there as well. Say OK. Okay, so we want to uncheck crop region visible in this view. We also want to do one other thing, which is we've got this section box in here defining where we're cutting through our model. We just want to hide the section box category in this view. So let's right click on it and say hide in view category. And that's actually, it does the same thing as going into visibility graphics, finding section box and unchecking it. You can see it's already unchecked here because I accomplished the same thing by right clicking and saying hide in view category. Now if you hide in view elements, it's not going to automatically uncheck it in visibility graphics, but since I said category, it's the same as going into annotation categories, finding section boxes and unchecking it there. Okay, so I'll deactivate that view, move the title line a little bit. And then the last thing I have to do is just modify my sections a little bit, similar to how I did my elevations. So modify the title, and we'll just pull in the edge of the view so that it pulls in our datum elements out here and we get rid of that overlap. Same thing here. I just try to make them kind of equal distance on each side of the building so that the building is in the center of the crop region. That looks pretty good there. And so I'll select both of those, uncheck crop region visible, and we'll modify this title as well. And then last thing, I'd see one more overlap here, so I'll just select that section marker and drag the top of it down to fit within the title block and hit to deactivate the view. And now everything's looking pretty good here. So at that point, I think at this point we're going to stop, and we'll pick this up in a part 2 where we'll add more detail to the model and push towards a little more completed building. Alrighty, thanks a lot for watching and following along, and as always I'll be available for questions in class and by email, and good luck.